So Coriolanus, Act 1, Scene 9, it begins with the alarm. When they say alarm, they mean alarm, but it's not really an alarm. It's just a trumpet blowing, which is a trumpet call. Is that where we stop, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct, right. That is a trumpet call to bring the troops back from pursuing their enemy. And communists, what he does is he expresses his gratitude and his admiration for Caius Marcius and for his work, and he actually promises him that he's going to tell everybody back in Rome, the important people, the common people, if I should tell thee over this thy day's work, thou not believe thy deeds. He says, if I had to tell you how much you were going to achieve on this day, you were not going to believe me that you were capable of so much. But I'll report it with senators shall mingle tears with smiles, where great patricians shall attend. In other words, they will listen and they will shrug their shoulders in disbelief. In the end, they will marvel, they will admire. We did speak about this, guys, where
Yeah,
ladies
we did.
shall be frightened. Okay, but anyway, I'll just carry on. And gladly quaked here more where the dull tribunes that with fusty plebeians, we said the moldy smelling plebeians, they will actually hate his honors. You know, the fact that he is being praised once again, but in their hearts, they will actually thank the gods. Our Rome had someone like Coriolanus. Okay. And then those important two lines, line 10 and 11, yet camest thou to a morsel of this feast. The feast is the metaphor for the battle, having fully dined before. So he fought a huge battle and then he still came to a second part. And then when Lartius comes in, I think maybe this is where we stopped, guys. Is it? He says, here is the horse, and we are the caparisons, we are the trappings, we are just the accessories to the horse. And the horse, of course, represents Caius Marcius. And Marcius says, pray no more. And I like that because it shows a kind of humility. He's actually quite modest. He doesn't want them to carry on and praise him about his skills on the battlefield. And he says, my mother, who has a right to extol her blood, when she does praise me, it grieves me. So he says, listen, please, man, don't be praising me like this. I don't even like it when my mother praises me. Okay. And then he means she has a right to compliment me on my work. I have done as you have done, which actually is not true. He's done far more. And he says, that's what I can. Induced as you have been, that's for my country. He that has but affected his goodwill hath overtaken mine act. And he says, we did the same. We did the same. Whatever we did it for our country. And whoever has achieved what they set out to do has, in fact, done far more than what Caius Marcius, has done. And like I said, it's quite unexpected to see that bit of humility and modesty coming from Caius Marcius when we know that in fact he's quite arrogant. Isn't that how the plebs see him? They see him as quite arrogant. And in fact, he is quite arrogant. And then Communist says, you shall not be the grave of your deserving. In other words, you are not going to be quiet. Okay, that is now his senior speaking. Rome must know the value of her own citizens, of her own soldier. But I think also when he speaks about Rome, must know, he's speaking more about the patricians. They need to be made aware of his exploits on the battlefield. Twere a concealment worse than theft, no less than a traducement to hide your doing. So he says it would be like covering it up. It's like a hiding. And to hide your deeds or your performance is like slander. Now, slander is gossip. And what is gossip, grade 11s? Gossip is malicious. Gossip is when you say things that break the other person down, and most of the time, gossip are things that you would never say to someone's face. That's gossip. Anything else is a discussion. Do you agree with me, Grace?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he says to hide your doings and to silence that which to the spire and top of praises vouch would seem but modest. And so he says it would be insufficient if we just briefly inform them. We've got to go into details. He says, therefore, I beg you, in sign of what you are, not to reward what you have done before our army hear me. And he says, allow me to tell people about your performance today. And Marcia says, I have some wounds upon me, and they smart to hear themselves remembered. So he has sustained injuries. Obviously, he's been slashed open with a sword, and he says, my wounds, they smart, they pain, they ache when you talk about them. So it's best not to talk about me. And communist says, should they not, well might they fester against ingratitude and tempt themselves with death. And so he's saying, your wounds will become infected. Okay. How will they become infected? They will become infected if people are ungrateful for what you have done. So your wounds, he says, also want to be praised. Of all the horses whereof we have taken good and good store of all the treasure in this field achieved in city, we render you a tenth to be taken forth before the common distribution at your only choice. Now here's the physical reward for Caius Marcius. And he says, look, they defeated this very large city. And he says, your share, your reward, your spoil is a full 1/10. And you can go in and choose your 10th to the value of a 10th before we allow, when he talks about a common distribution, before we allow the rest of the soldiers to get their share of the spoils, which means that he will get the most valuable of items. Okay. But now, further evidence of Caius Marcius' unselfishness, which is there under the surface. He says, I thank you, General, but cannot make my heart consent to take a bribe to pay my sword. I do refuse it and stand upon my common part with those that have beheld the doing. And so he says, I reject your offer. And I want you to take my share and give it to my men, which is quite generous, which means that he is going to go with nothing to show for all his work except his scars. Okay. Now, with that being said, yes, he is generous, but it's also important to remember that he does come from a wealthy family. Okay, so it's not as if his family is in need of anything. And Marcius, and then of course everyone is very, very excited and they cheer him for his kindness. And Marcia says, may these same instruments which you profane never sound no more, when drums and trumpets shall in the field prove flatterers, let court cities be made all of false faith soothing. And two things I want to say. The one thing is, he does not approve here of hypocrisy and flattery. And I think that this is quite important, because later on in the play, when he is expected to go and flatter people, when he asks them for their votes like politicians do, when he's expected to be quite hypocritical, he finds it very, very difficult. Okay. And then the second point that I also want to make about him giving away his share of the spoils is that Caius Marcius can afford to be, and I like to use the word magnanimous, which is a really nice way of saying he's very unselfish. So he can afford to be magnanimous in victory, because here he is at his best, generous of spirit on the battlefield, and but something he is never able to extend to the political arena. Okay, does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
To some extent, ma'am.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thank
ma'am.
you for that. Then then communists, no, then he says, when steel grows soft as the parasite silk, let him be made an overture for wars. No more, I say, for that I have not washed my nose that bled, or foiled some debil wretch, which without note he as many else have done. You shouting forth in acclamations hyperbolical, as if I love my little, which should be dieted in praise sauced with lies. And all he is saying here, don't worry about that, is that he doesn't want to be churned, and he says he doesn't think that a small achievement should be inflated and made into a big deal. Communist says, in fact, in this little speech of Communist insists, since he doesn't have a physical reward, since he's given his away, Communists insist that he deserves a new name. And you know how a name often gives us insight into a character. It's oftentimes linked to characteristics of a person. And so Communist says, too modest are you, more cruel to your good report than grateful to us that give you truly. By your patience, if against yourself you be incensed, we'll put you like one that means his proper harm in manacles, then reason safely with you. Therefore be it known as to us, to all the world, that Caius Marcius wears this war's garland. Now, what is the garland? You know, the garland is the wreath they put on your head, usually in sports. They would give you the wreath, but here it's a sign of his achievement on the battlefield. In token of the which my noble horse, known to camp, I give him with all the trimmings, and from this time for what he did before Coriolanus, call him with all the applause and clamor of the host, Caius Marcius Coriolanus. And he says, bear the title nobly ever. So how does Communist reward him? One, he gives him his personal horse. Secondly, he gives him, in line 61, he gives him all the accessories that go with the horse. And then most importantly, he renames Caius Marcius, and he will now be known as Coriolanus. You can see the link coming from the city of Coriolis. And then, of course, everyone is thrilled with that. And everyone says, Caius Marcius Coriolanus. And Coriolanus says, and so from this point in the play, learners, we will speak of Coriolanus. Okay? And he says, I will go wash, and when my face is fair, when my face is cleansed of the dirt and the blood and the sweat, you shall perceive whether I blush or not. But obviously he's blushing. He's quite embarrassed by this reward, by this new name. Howbeit, I thank you. I mean to stride your steed, and at all time to undercrest your good addition. And he says, I will ride on your horse. I will use your gift. And he says, at all times, I will try to live up to this name as best as I can, which you have given to me. And then Communist says on page 33, so to our tent where before we do repose, before we rest, we will write to Rome of our success. You, Titus Lartius, must go to Coriolanus, send us to Rome the best with whom we may articulate for their own good and ours. So now the leading citizens of Coriolanus now need to sit with these Romans, and they need to go negotiate the way forward, showing their subservience and probably taxes and things like that. And then Lartius says, I shall, my lord, the gods begin to mock me. I that now refuse most princely gifts am bound to beg of my lord general. And he says, it's quite funny. The gods must be making fun of me because I must now be begging for a gift. And Communist says, what is it that you want? Because he says, before you even ask me, you can have this gift. And Coriolanus says, I sometimes lay here in Coriolanus at a poor man's house. He used me kindly, meaning he treated me well. He cried to me, I saw him prisoner, but then Aufidius was within my view, and wrath overwhelmed my pity. I request you to give my poor host freedom. This is again the second time that we see Coriolanus being quite generous, because he's asking that a prisoner, someone from the city of Coriolanus, is given his freedom. And so for our purposes, we see that Coriolanus has basic kindness and decency. And it's so funny because he's showing it here to an enemy. Yes, he did show the same qualities towards his soldiers, men he's fought with, but when he again is amongst the commoners away from the battlefield, then he is very rude, very insulting, very arrogant. And Communist says, oh well, big, were he the butcher of my son, he should be free as is the wind. And Communist is kind of over the top here, because he says, of course we will do as you have asked us. And he says, even if this prisoner, even if this enemy had murdered my son, had butchered my son, literally meaning into pieces, just because you ask, I'm giving him his freedom, which is very hyperbolic, I think. And Lartius says, Martius, what is his name? By Jupiter, by God, I forgot, I'm tired. My memory is tired, have been no wine. And yeah, it sounds like the adrenaline has all worn off, and now the man is tired. And Communist says, let's go to our tent. The blood upon your face dries. It is time. It should be looked to. And let's go. So he's obviously going off. He's going to have a bath. He's going to imbibe. Yeah, and he's going to rest. So then we come to scene 10, which is the last scene of Act 1. And this scene increases the tension between Aufidius and Coriolanus. Okay. And so here we're meeting Tullus Aufidius, and he is quite bloodied, just the way Coriolanus is from his last fights with Coriolanus. And Aufidius says, the town is taken. 'twill be delivered back on good condition. So Aufidius is quite upset that his town or the city has been lost to the Romans, and the first soldier tries to console him by saying, "No, we'll get control of our own city back after some negotiations." And Aufidius says, "Conditions," meaning on favorable terms. "I would I were a Roman, for I cannot, being a false key, be that I am." Now, this gives us insight into the character of Aufidius. And what he's saying, "For I cannot be a false key, be that I am." That's a nice little quote, by the way. He says, I can't be the one that, because okay, let me rephrase. He refuses to accept defeat. It's so difficult for him. In the same way that it's difficult for Coriolanus to accept defeat, it's also difficult for Aufidius to accept defeat. Now think about it, grade 11. I'm sure that you know people, you have friends, maybe even classmates, who you can play a game with. But the minute they are losing, they become really angry and they don't want to play anymore, or they start an argument, right? And it's all based in the fact that they don't like to lose. Okay, we even have teachers who don't like to lose. But I'm not going to go there now. And that's exactly the kind of person that Aufidius is. And then he says, "Condition. What good condition can treaty find in the part that is at mercy? This is important, 5 times, Marcius, I have fought with thee. So often as thou beat me, and wouldest do so, I think, should we encounter as often as we eat." And this shows us what is at the heart of his hatred towards Coriolanus. Okay, so the main thing is that every time they have met in battle, Coriolanus has defeated him. And then he goes on to say, even if we had to fight as often as we eat what, 3 times a day, at least. He says, if we had to fight 3 times a day, this man would still be beating me 3 times a day. So you know what is going to happen? This Zoom meeting is going to end in 9 minutes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you just to give me a few minutes and I will start another Zoom meeting so that we can carry on. Okay? All right. So then he says, "By the elements, if ever again I meet him beard to beard," we say face to face, "he's mine or I am his." And here Aufidius is promising he's promising himself that the next time they fight, he will fight to the death. Okay? I think it's also his ego that is quite wounded that is speaking here. Are you still with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's
Yes,
all
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So then he says, "Mine emulation hath not the honor in it had, for where I thought to crush him in an equal force, to sword, I'll potch at him some way, or wrath or craft may get him." And he says here, I wanted to imitate him. In fact, with the same kind of intensity. Okay, I wanted to crush him with equal force the way he wanted to crush me with evil force. And he says, I'm going to find a way of destroying him in a fight. I'll potch at him some way, or wrath or craft may get him. Craft is talking now about magic, and wrath is, of course, intense anger. And the first soldier says, he's the devil. And Ophidius agrees with this, bolder though not so subtle. My valor's poisoned. What is your valor? Your valor is your bravery. And when he says, my valor's poisoned with only suffering stain by him. Now the stain is the disgrace. And so Ophidius is starting to suffer from jealousy. He says, my image, my reputation, which is great in Coriolanus, is actually being polluted by this one part that I cannot defeat, and that is Coriolanus, formerly now known as uh, what's his name? Coriolanus. Okay. For him shall fly out of itself, nor sleep, nor sanctuary, being naked, sick, nor fame, nor capital, the prayers of priests, nor times of sacrifice, embargoes, all of fury shall lift up their rotten privilege and custom against my hate. So he's basically saying that nothing is able to separate him from his hatred for, I keep saying Caius Marcius, for Coriolanus. And it's going to be so ironic. And I want us to remember these words of his, and I want us to remember the intensity of his hatred, because later on, when Coriolanus comes to him, when Ophidius has the upper hand and he says, either let me fight for you or you can kill me, Ophidius seems to, he holds himself back and he doesn't show his hatred. This intensity of he doesn't show it to Coriolanus at all. Okay. And then the scene basically ends with Ophidius saying that he refuses, jump to line 30, I am attended at the Cypress Grove. I pray you to south the city malls. Bring me word there how the world goes, that to the pace of it I may spur on my journey. So he doesn't want to be left behind by the speed of events, but what he's going to do is try and participate in the negotiation for the new terms of the city of Coriolis. Okay, now we're going to start Act 2, Scene 1, and I don't think we are going to get too far, but this scene, Scene 1 now, serves as a link between the battlefield and the Roman power struggle. And so here we encounter Menenius. Now remember, Menenius is a Pat, and he is here with Sicinius and Brutus. These two gentlemen, they are quite old. They are plebs, and they are tribunes. So they have been appointed by the people to speak for them, to speak for the plebs when they are meeting with the Pats. Okay, Rogopida's just having network problems. Okay, so Menenius starts off by saying, the augurer, meaning the fortune teller, tells me we shall have news tonight, good or bad, not according to the prayer of the people, for they love not Marcius. So Menenius says, because the plebs don't love Marcius, they would probably want something bad to happen to him. Sicinius says, nature teaches beasts to know their friends. That's a very, very important line. Nature teaches beasts to know their friends. Now, animal imagery is very important in this play. What does it mean when he says nature teaches beasts to know their friends. Does anybody want to attempt a response to that? No? Okay. Can nature be changed? When I'm talking about nature, I'm talking about the innate characteristics that you find in people, in animals. Okay, I'm talking to myself here.
No, ma'am.
Quite right. Quite right. Thank you for that. No, it can't be changed. We can pretend, but we can't really change. A fox is always going to be a fox. He's going to be sly. He's going to be cunning. A snake is always going to be deadly and dangerous. And it's not an animal, in inverted commas, that you can become friends with. So when it says nature teaches beasts to know their friends, that through the characteristics we know who are our enemies and who are our friends. I've literally got 1 minute left. Please remember that when this, you know how Zoom meeting ends, it's just very abruptly. I will start another meeting straight away. Then Menenia says, pray you, who does the wolf love? And the wolf here is referring to the plebs, the common people. And Cecilia says, the lamb, the wolf loves the lamb. And the lamb here represents Caius Marcius. Now, my question is, does a wolf really love a lamb? No, not really. He may pretend, but he sees the lamb as what? Simply a meal. Is it not so? So look at the Menenius' reply, which actually makes sense. He says, yes, they love the lamb to devour him as the hungry plebeians would devour the noble